My mate and I broke into my ex's house. What we found was horrifying. My ex Lloyd is like a Sean Cody model. I'm more Sean Astin. I was constantly reminded on Instagram every time he posted a couple's selfie. Some of the men that followed him, the eternally shirtless types, posted hurtful comments. Beauty and the beast dude out here helping the less fortunate slide into my DMs if you come to your senses, bro. I have a realistic opinion of myself. Not just my looks, but the whole package. I was absolutely punching above my weight. Lloyd came to mine one evening to chill. He turned to me as we watched the bear, uttering that classic line everyone loves to hear. "Toby, we need to talk." He'd met someone else. I didn't argue or beg him to reconsider. I sniveled a bit after he left, then shook it off and restarted the episode. It wasn't until the next day that I thought about the few belongings of mine that were at his house. A couple of work shirts and a pair of shoes I'd left there for the nights I stayed over. More importantly, I'd left a watch that belonged to my late brother. Only a simple Casio, the kind you can pick up for less than a round at Wetherspoons. He loved the retro aesthetic. That watch meant the world to me, and I kicked myself that I'd left it there. I texted him to ask when was a good time to pick up my things. He said he'd let me know, followed by nothing for days. I asked him again, and even said he could leave them in a bag outside the house. Then I suggested he post me the watch and bin the rest. Months of excuses later, it didn't look like I'd be getting my things back anytime soon. Then I saw the Instagram post. Me and this boy, it was Lloyd with his brand new and improved muscle boyfriend. They were in the Caribbean, embraced on a beach with matching designer stubble. The comments were vastly different to what I was used to. Woof. Room for one more? Suddenly, I had a hard time accepting the audacity to disregard my requests, and I wanted nothing more than to get my brother's watch back. "Don't be an idiot, Toby," said my best friend Carl when I told him I was considering breaking into Lloyd's house. "He's in Aruba," I said. "It's the perfect opportunity." "They're just things," he said. "It's not worth breaking the law over." "They're not just things," I snapped. "That crappy watch is all I have left of my brother." "I'm sorry, Toby," he said. "Look, please just wait. When he's back, go to his place unannounced. Don't give him a chance to make excuses." If I'd slept on it, the chances are I would have come to my senses. But I was hurt and angry. Irrationality got the better of me. "I'm going tonight. I'll face the consequences." Carl shook his head. "Fine, I'm going with you." "Absolutely not." After arguing about it for some time, we found ourselves Googling how to pick locks and other tips for breaking into a house. Incognito, of course. In the early hours, we were outside Lloyd's house, dressed in black jeans and hoodies. Fortunately, it wasn't a big neighborhood, and the house was detached. "Let's go around back," I whispered. "I can't believe we're doing this," said Carl. "I think my heart might explode." "Mine too," I said as we got to the back door. "I think you should leave. It's not fair that you get dragged down with me if—" "Sod that," he said. "I'm committed to stupidity now." Due to our spontaneity, there was no time to acquire proper lock-picking tools. Instead, we had a couple of jumbo paper clips and the smallest flathead screwdriver we could find. I started with that, carefully inserting it into the lock. Barely seconds had gone by when we heard a click. We looked at each other in shock. "Have you done this before?" asked Carl. "Beginner's luck, I swear." The back door opened directly into Lloyd's kitchen. I put a finger to my lips and crept inside, signaling for Carl to stay put. I silently made my way through the dark house, then upstairs to the bedroom. There were no signs of anyone being home. I let out a sigh of relief, then started looking for the watch using my phone torch. Carl made an appearance after a few minutes, which almost made me scream. I got worried, he said quietly. "I can't find the watch," I said. "What about your shirts and stuff?" "To be honest, I was only looking for the watch." I looked through the wardrobe and couldn't see any of my shirts. "He must have taken them out already. I'll go look around." I'll keep looking up here, he said. I crept back downstairs, going from room to room. I eventually found a bag in the downstairs bathroom, wedged between the toilet and the wall. It contained my belongings, watch included. Gee, thanks, Lloyd, I thought to myself, but was happy nonetheless. I went back upstairs to get Carl. Okay, we can leave, I said. He stood by Lloyd's bedside table, looking at something. It was a notebook with a leather strap around it. I don't like the look of this, he said. Where was it? He pointed to the bottom of the wall, where a skirting board panel had come loose. Why would you keep a notebook hidden in there? He said. A shiver ran down my spine. I found my things. Let's put it back and get the hell out of here. Wait, we have to look. We do not, I said in a loud whisper. Whatever's in there, I don't want to know. Before I could stop him, he'd picked up the book and unraveled the strap. I was about to curse his name when he dropped it open, a hand covering his mouth. There was a printed Instagram selfie of an attractive 20-something man. Below it was another photo of the man, though in that one he was handcuffed to a pipe in a dingy-looking room. He was shirtless and had a mechanical-looking tattoo sleeve. His eyes were wide with fear. Next to the pictures were handwritten notes, a bio of the man, descriptions of his behaviors, conversations, etc. As it went on, it became more graphic. There were descriptions of tortures inflicted on him. I was disgusted but couldn't stop reading. What the fuck? Carl said under his breath. There's more, I said. A hint of plastic was visible on the edge of the page. I turned it over, recoiling in horror. There was a clear plastic bag fixed to the page. Inside was a rough square of tanned, leathery skin, partly covered with the tattooed cogs of a mechanical wheel. I think I'm going to be sick, said Carl, turning away. I went into a daze as I stared at the book, shocked at how Lloyd could be capable of such a thing. There were other pages too. The book contained 3 different men, all with similar pictures and descriptions, and a plastic-covered skin sample. I recognize him, I said, going back to the first picture. I took out my phone, hands trembling as I scrolled through Lloyd's Instagram feed. I had to go back a couple of years, but there he was. It was another ex of his. You were dating a psycho, said Carl. Toby, that could have been you. Don't, I shouted. I can't be thinking about that right now. We need to give this to the police. He nodded. We'll be fucked for breaking and entering, though. I know. I'm sorry you had to be here, too. Don't be stupid, he said. I knew what I was potentially getting myself into. Well, I didn't expect this, but you know. I shook my head. These men will have families, people who care about them. Let's do the right thing. I hugged Carl, then put the book in the bag with my belongings. As we were about to leave, there came a noise from somewhere in the house. We both froze until we heard it again. It was coming from the basement. No, Carl said. We've got to go. My stomach was in knots, but I put the bag down and crept to the basement door, pressing my ear against it. There's someone down there, I said. I can hear them struggling. He was shaking his head. This isn't happening. Call the police, I said, trying the door. I was surprised it opened. Toby, don't call the police, Carl. For fuck's sake, he said, taking out his phone. I could see his hands shaking. What do I say? Tell them we need help. Probably an ambulance, too. I told him Lloyd's exact address, then switched the light on before descending the dimly lit staircase. It was the only room in the house I hadn't been in. My legs felt like they could give way at any moment. I'd never been so scared in my life. When I saw the man sitting on the floor, cuffed to a pipe with a rag tied around his mouth, it didn't seem real for a moment. It was like I was watching a film or something. But as soon as he saw me, his muffled screams for help snapped me out of it. I ran to him, untying the rag. "Oh, thank God," he cried. "Get me the fuck out of here, please." "My mate's upstairs," I said, trying to stay calm. "He's calling the police. Are you hurt?" "My foot," he said. I'm pretty sure it's broken. I hadn't noticed, but I grimaced when I saw it. It was so bruised, his whole foot looked a dark shade blue. Okay, let's try and get these cuffs off. I looked around the basement for something that might be useful. There was a countertop with some drawers and cupboards underneath. There was a selection of knives and other sharp instruments in the drawers, which made me shudder. The closer I looked, the more unsettling it became. There were deep scratches and dark stains on the wooden counter and walls. When I opened the cupboards, I fell back with a fright. "What is it?" yelled the man. There were 3 adult human skulls sitting on a shelf. I noticed one had some teeth missing before I kicked it shut. "What was it?" he asked frantically. I could feel something digging into my upper thigh, and remembered I had the paper clips and screwdriver in my pocket. "You don't want to know," I said, taking out the screwdriver. I stuck it into the cuff's lock and started to dig around. I hadn't really gotten a good look at his face until that moment. I realized it was the same man from Lloyd's Instagram picture in Aruba. I was a bit confused on account of it only being posted the day before. It hadn't occurred to me that the photo was taken at another time. "When were you in Aruba?" I asked, still trying the lock. "What?" he asked. "I recognize you from Lloyd's Instagram. You're the man he was in the Caribbean with." "What are you talking about?" he said. "I've never been out of this country, let alone the Caribbean." "Toby!" Carl screamed from upstairs. I heard a thud. My blood ran cold as loud footsteps came charging down the staircase. It was Lloyd. I held out the ridiculously small screwdriver with a trembling hand, the only thing I had to protect us. The cuffed man began to whimper. "Why are you in my basement, Toby?" asked Lloyd, with an unnervingly calm tone. "What did you do to Carl?" I stuttered. "Why are you in my basement?" I thought you were in Aruba. I came to get my things, my brother's watch." "So you broke into my house?" "I was upset," I said. "I didn't really think about it, just..." He started laughing. "The last thing I expected from you was something as wild and spontaneous as this. I'm actually kind of impressed." He started coming closer. "I saw your picture," I said. "You were both in Aruba." "It's amazing what Photoshop and AI can do," he said. "It wasn't even my body, Toby. I'm buff, but not that buff. You should know that." "But why?" I asked. "If we're in Aruba, people don't get suspicious. People don't file missing persons reports." "Oh God," the man cried from the floor. "Please let me go." "Don't be silly," Lloyd mocked. "You know how this goes now." "Stay back," I shouted, swiping the screwdriver at him. He laughed. "I'm embarrassed for you." He turned towards the counter. Without thinking, I charged at him. The screwdriver stabbed into his upper arm, making him scream. With barely a moment's hesitation, he swung his fist around and knocked me to the floor. "Look who decided to grow a spine," he sneered. "You sad, boring sack of shit." He pulled the screwdriver out of his arm and threw it in my direction. I flinched as it bounced somewhere behind me. He started rummaging through the drawer as I tried to focus, my vision a little blurry. Like music to my ears, the sound of sirens could be heard in the distance. Lloyd snapped his head back to the staircase, frozen. "Thank you, Carl," I said, attempting a smile. "Fuck you," screamed Lloyd, coming at me with a blade in his hand. I covered my face with my arms and kicked my legs out. Lloyd fell to my side, giving me time to turn over. I crawled towards the cuffed man until I felt a sharp pain in my shoulder. Then Lloyd forced me onto my back, the blade now glistening with blood. "We're even," he grinned, out of breath, "but I'm about to take the lead." He brought the blade down and I caught his arm, groaning as I struggled. Lloyd was strong on account of his regular gym sessions. My newly injured shoulder didn't help matters either. I could feel him overpowering me. His teeth gritted into a frightening expression. His handsome features were replaced by something almost inhuman. There came a scream from nearby, and Lloyd was no longer on top of me. Instead, he was writhing on the floor in agony. The screwdriver was sticking out of his side, just above his pelvis. As I caught my breath, I saw the cuffed man, though he was no longer cuffed. He was leaning against the wall, standing on his good foot. I scrambled over to him. "Come on," I said. He put his arm around me, and I winced at the pain in my shoulder. "It won't be easy getting up those stairs, but we can do it." "I don't think so," sneered Lloyd. He was standing at the bottom of the staircase, hand held against his blood-stained shirt. "The only thing leaving this basement are your skins." As a chill went through me, there came a crashing sound from upstairs. "Police!" called out a loud voice. "Help!" we screamed together. Lloyd began to approach us with a roar, but didn't get too far before he fell down, convulsing as a police officer tased him from the staircase. "Down here!" she yelled. "You two stay right where you are." The cuffed man, who I later found out was called Daniel, was treated in hospital. He did indeed have a broken foot, inflicted by Lloyd as part of his torture. He was also malnourished, but made a full recovery. We've stayed in contact, having shared this crazy experience. I guess we owe each other our lives. I was happy to see Carl alive and well, albeit with a sore head, when I left the basement. We had broken into Lloyd's house regardless of the outcome, and he made sure we were charged with it. The judge was lenient. We were each given a £2,500 fine plus 40 hours of community service. Justice was served for the poor men who weren't so lucky. I'd be very surprised if Lloyd ever sees life outside of prison again. I originally had no intention of visiting him, but something kept playing on my mind in the subsequent months after the incident. Annoyingly, he still had his good looks and didn't appear fazed at all. If it weren't for the cuffs and all-grey outfit, you'd think he'd been living it up. "Couldn't stay away, huh?" He smirked. "Don't flatter yourself, Lloyd. Why are you here? Those men you tortured and—" I couldn't bring myself to say it. "Skinned," he smiled. I took a deep breath. "You had some kind of sexual relationship with all of them. Why not me?" He scoffed. "We had sex. I remember because it was so bad. I mean, why didn't you do that to me too?" "Oh, Toby," he said pitifully. "Look at yourself. You were never good enough for me.